Denmark, awesome. Canada, excellent. All right, so as we're going along, it is 10 o'clock. We are going to get started. My name's Denver Noes, and this is the 5 strategies millionaires use to cut taxes by 50% and 5x their wealth. This is part 2. So for the last event, we had about roughly 490 some people registered, close to 500. This time, I think we had 725 people registering as of this morning. So that's great news. There's a lot of people that are interested in this information. So I'm going to really pack everything here with a lot of values and give you a lot of good information. So if you were on part 1, we're going to expand on those strategies from part 1. And if this is your first time on one of these events, I will do a recap, and don't worry, you'll get caught up to speed, pretty quickly. So as we go through things, I'm going to start kind of going through, we're going to talk about the agenda. So we're going to go through case studies, talking about saving 6 or 7 figures in taxes. We're going to go through the frameworks to 5x wealth that, the wealthy people are using. And we're going to go through advanced tax elimination strategies. So as we kind of go through these, I think I'm going to start with, just going through the case studies that we're going to cover later on. We're going to build on some frameworks. I'm going to give you the knowledge about how these are built and go through case studies like these, where we're looking at $225,000 in tax savings for a $900,000 income, or $90,000 in tax savings on a $450,000 income, $550,000 in tax savings for a business sale, $800,000 in tax savings for an e-commerce business with a $3 million income. So obviously these are pretty big numbers, and there's frameworks and stuff that we're going to apply. So my hope is at the end of this, you'll kind of have a good understanding of how and why it's so important to kind of focus on the tax piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of give you, go into a little bit deeper dive on one big case study, and we'll use that to kind of start expanding on how it's all put together. So this one is a $7 million tax-free case study. This is a high-income earner, earning $1.4 million a year in the medical field. So we use a strategy then to go out and reduce the taxable income by 50%. That resulted in a $350,000 tax savings. So now what we're doing from there is then we're building out on this flow chart. 150 grand goes to lifestyle. Then we take $200,000, put that into a tax-free bucket. So again, this is money that would have gone to the IRS, goes into this tax-free bucket. So that's the middle of the flow chart there. At the end of 5 years, now we have this $1 million tax-free bucket. We use the tax-free matching program that we have to add another $3 million tax-free. So now we've created this $4 million tax-free asset, all from tax savings. That asset, all tax-free, is then going to kick off $280,000 in tax-free income, which generates $7 million in tax-free distribution, all from tax savings. So now this is your first exposure to really high-level planning. I'm going to go through reasons why that a lot of times you're not hearing, about strategies like this. But what it really does in this area, it does kind of accomplishes a lot of things, and that is protecting wealth from taxes, both currently and future taxes and tax increases, securing future income, reducing risk, and increasing safety. So all of those things are very important, because when you think about, I guess what a lot of people are talking about right now is things that they're worried about. And I do talk to a lot of people that come into the Wealth for Life group. I'll talk about that in a second. But they hear things like, this is the Ray Dalio video on the changing world order, 40 million views on YouTube. There's another one from, on the fourth turning, talking from Neil Howe, talking about, this changing world order that we're going to have all this upheaval, and it's going to be revolution. It's going to be all this crazy stuff. And rightly so, people are concerned about those things and how they are affecting their wealth. And a lot of these things are kind of bringing in this to highlight the fact that the whole world has basically gone on this spending spree of creating money out of air for a long period of time. Global debt has hit this record number of fresh deficits, very high percentage. So it's not just the United States, it's really the whole world. And so these people like Ray Dalio and Neil Howe, you're talking about, hey, is there going to be this big reset? So what we want to do then is be able to structure our wealth and finances so those things don't matter, right? Good common sense stuff. But as we get into this, a lot of these strategies then are going to be things that people haven't heard of. And most people are kind of stuck in this kind of position where they're in this position where they have one income, they are paying max taxes, they're all in the stock market. And because of everything's going on in the world, this does not feel particularly safe, even when people have money. So we're going to talk about the frameworks on how to do different things. Good common sense stuff. So as we're getting into this, my name's Denver Noes. I'm president of Wealth for Life. I'm a 20-year advisor and fiduciary. The fiduciary standard, of course, means legally bound to operate in clients' best interest. And I've been working for high net worth clients for 20 years. But a lot of what I learned really in the real world, and that had to do with dealing with my family and taking care of my mom, my dad, my grandma. They all got hit with health issues later on in life. I ended up taking care of all three of them before they passed. And I always bring this up because I know that there's a lot of people that are going to be going through taking care of elderly parents. I look at my grandma's situation. My grandfather was a coal miner. He had got black lung, had a black lung pension. They had saved up some money. He retired, unfortunately passed away at a heart attack right at 65. And then my grandma just ended up living her savings, living to be 92, ended up living with me the last few years. My mom's situation was a little bit different. She had complications from a car accident, ended up requiring a lot of care, same deal with the support of family and friends that was able to care for her in the house. My dad's situation a little bit different. His health issues became more chronic, had to go in a nursing home, had to manage that whole deal. And I bring all this up because there's a lot of things that happen in the world, in finance and stuff, that life doesn't go as planned. And I'm certainly a wiser person for doing that. But if you're going through that, I just want you to know there are resources to get. You can reach out and get some help with dealing that or plan for it because you might be dealing with it soon. But with regard to my dad's situation, he owned a business, right? He started a pest control business back in 1971. He built it up by going door to door, knocking on the door. Hi, my name's Mike. I have a pest control business, personalized service. That's how he built it up. So you go a few years down the road, and he built it up to 1 truck, then 2 trucks, 3 trucks, 4 trucks. So he started getting some success in that business. And then he got audited, audited by the IRS, right? So this had been about 1980. So he ran his business out of a trailer. My parents, they were great parents. They just weren't great together. So they were divorced. My dad lived a few miles away in one of those 55 and older mobile home parks. That's where he ran his business from. He had all the trucks parked outside. The IRS agent literally came to his trailer, sat on his couch, and audited him. And this is, again, in 1980. And what a lot of people don't know is that if you look at the tax brackets in 1980, they were very different than they are today. But you can see right here in the middle slide that where I've highlighted in red, every sleeve was taxed at a different rate. So my dad's business starts getting to this 60,000 to 80,000 range. Every dollar in there is taxed at 54%. It seems mind-blowing at that point. Then he was getting above there to 85 grand, towards 100 grand. Every dollar is getting taxed at 59% at the federal level. So the tax code was punishing. And at the time, being a small business owner, this is 1980, sole proprietor, we didn't have Google, we didn't have how do I plan for my taxes, and he didn't have good records, and the IRS hammered him. And that really was a growth killer in his business. It really, hampered the business. He ended up, going the other route, becoming small. He had to get rid of, they slap a lien on the bank account for the taxes. I mean, they were ruthless at the time. And that really kind of destroyed his business. He went small, decided to fly under the radar. And, my dad hated the IRS. I mean, if you guys have seen the movie A Christmas Story, I remember Ralphie talking about his old dad, his old man. My old man used profanity like an artist would use clay and oil, right? That was how my dad described, the IRS. So that is what helped put it on the radar for me that, hey, taxes are a threat to your wealth. And then when I started writing big checks to the IRS and then looking at clients that I work with that are in that upper echelons of net worth, 10 million, 20, 50 million, what they're doing on taxes, they're not paying the same rate as taxes as other people. So we're going to talk about the strategies and the ways to do that. So I'm going to start with kind of a quick a question here that maybe you can help me with. So I want you to just do some guessing here. But let's say you go out there and you're going to retire with $2 million in a 401k and you want $120,000 in income. My question is, how much will you owe in taxes on that $2 million 401k, say from age 65 to 90, over the course in taxes? Take some guesses. I'll give you a second here. Type them in the chat. Try and figure out how much you think you're going to have to pay on that $2 million over the course of your retirement. What are you going to owe in taxes? So just type a few guesses in the chat and we'll go through it. So, and as these are coming in, I'm going to kind of just give you the answer here. $1,138,940,000 in taxes. That's the cumulative amount of taxes, dollar amounts that you will pay, not the rate of taxes, the cumulative dollar amount. So on this, there's software that does it. You simply put it in, calculates married filing jointly current tax rates, $1,138,940 in taxes at current rates if taxes don't go up. All right, it's a dramatically bigger number than people think. Now, I want you to role play with me for a second. Let's say that you're out there and you're a financial advisor, or let me rephrase that. Let's say that you're a fiduciary. And as a fiduciary, your job is to go out, find the best strategies the market has to offer in all areas of wealth, help prevent financial catastrophes, help you become financially unbreakable. That's your job as a fiduciary. Are you going to have this conversation? Are you going to bring this up when you sit down with a client? Is that something that you should possibly know? Hey, Mr. and Mrs., you guys are, 20 years from retirement, you're on a great track saving, but when you get down to retirement, you're going to owe $1 million in taxes. So maybe we should do something about that. Or are you going to talk about, well, you know what? We got some ETFs, we got some index funds. You're only getting a 6% rate of return. Why don't you move your money over here? We'll see if we can get you 7, right? Which one of those things is probably more important to talk about? And it's probably the tax conversation. And I would ask you, have you ever had anyone talk to you about these types of numbers? And it doesn't usually come up in conversation. But the reality is what you can really do with good planning is then you can get down to retirement. Like in this example, you build a $60,000 tax-free income stream. Now you've saved $560,000 in taxes using tax bracket strategy that we're going to talk about today. So it's a savings of $500,000 or $600,000. And this was actually a client of ours. We set a strategy up over a decade ago. He's in distribution now. He's got his $60,000 a year coming in. It's going to save him about $560,000 in taxes. Again, you can talk about strategies like these, or we can all just talk about index funds. And maybe this company has better index funds and that company has better index funds. The reality is those are the strategies that aren't going to move the needle, and people aren't really hearing about these strategies. And this is why I call it's kind of welcome to the state of financial advice in America. So for the 99% of advisors and the 99% of people, they're getting advice that says invest in stocks. Now you go out, you have $50,000, you go get some financial advice, invest in the stock market. You have $5 million, you go get financial advice, it's invest in the stock market. Now I'm not anti-stock market whatsoever. I'm a fiduciary, I'm an advisor, I sell investments. But I recognize all of these things below the iceberg. And when I start looking at the allocations for clients of mine that are high net worth, usually their smallest asset is assets in the stock market, right? This is their smallest allocation. Most of their wealth is made, and the wealth that they created in other areas. Of course, we have things like private equity, acquisitions, real estate, tax elimination, business ownership, tax-free matching. Obviously, the biggest two, what's the largest asset class for the top 1%? Owning businesses. Number 2 is real estate. And number 3 is tax elimination, tax-free matching strategies. All of those things together are what really moves the needle. Yet most of the strategies that we're talking about, most of the wealth advice, I should say, in the country is designed around just investing in the stock market. So, and that's really important because if we just talk about the tax side, for example, right now, the top 10% of Americans pays 70% of all federal taxes at current tax rates. The other 90% does not. So when you start looking at the state of mainstream financial advice, 90% of the population doesn't have a tax problem. They have a cash flow problem. So most of the financial advice geared toward them is geared around cash flow issues. The top 10%, and that's usually most of the people on this call, have different issues, different planning strategies they're going to apply. And I'm going to drill down on that even a little bit further. So if you look at, this is an article from Kiplinger, it just talks about net worth levels. We started out showing this $2 million 401k, and you look at here, the top 2% has net worth of 2.4 million, top 5% about $1 million. So when you're looking at that type of stuff, you're in the top, 5% or less, right? So the financial advice that's out there, or I would say, let me rephrase it differently. The financial stuff we're going to cover today does not apply for 95% of the people out there. And I'll give you an example of this. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was a big name podcast. They had, a host that you would all know, and then a best-selling financial author out there that, of course, you would know as well. And they talked about, it was the title that grabbed me was Strategies for High Income Earners. And when it came to the part about taxes, and the host asked the guest, this best-selling financial author, well, what do you do about taxes? His answer was, well, I'm in the greatest country in the world. I love being in the United States. It allows me to create more success, and I'm happy to pay extra taxes. So if I have to go out and pay an extra $5,000 in taxes or an extra $30,000 in taxes, I'm fine with that. And that's how I knew he's not talking to high income earners. So the high income earners, that I'm talking to are, paying an extra $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 or more, or even $1 million or more in taxes. And that's a different level of wealth. And so that's why the strategies, when you go out and we start talking about some of these strategies today, and you're like, I haven't heard about it. My financial advisor isn't mentioning them, because a lot of these strategies only apply to people that are in those higher income levels. And that's really important on the tax side, because as you're probably experiencing, if you're here in that range where the income you're in that 150,000 to, say $1 million in income, you're getting punished by the US tax code. The more you're taxed, the more that you make, and that you're getting the full brunt. Most of the time that's in that 30 to 40% range of taxes is what you end up paying. If you're in higher states, that can be up to 50%. And it becomes like paddling upstream. So when you're out there and you're thinking that I need to, try and get ahead. Hey, we got this extra money. We got this stuff from the bonuses. Then you go meet with your accountants and you're like, hey, we can't buy the thing because we have this extra, that hundreds and thousands of dollars of tax bills, right? So taxes are a big threat to wealth. And that's what we're going to talk about dealing with. So as we kind of get into strategies, I bring up this chart of the net worth again, because what you see, the big orange and blue bars there, that's the top 1%, or the top 1%, about 11 million to get there. And then you look at the top 10%, which is the next column there. Here you're talking about 1.2 million. So the difference between top 10% and top 1% is huge. And what is preventing people from getting there a lot of times is taxes. So it's a really big number because those taxes are hammering you. Once you get over the top, that's where people are starting to use the strategy we talk about today, which is to dramatically reduce taxes. All right, everybody making sense so far? Now, if I'm coming through clear, just give me a like, or give me a chat, something in the chat there, so I know you can all still hear me. Everything's good. When we talk about taxes, now, if you're on the previous event and I showed this, chart before, this is again trying to get through the concept of the power of tax-free versus taxable. If you take $1 and you double it one time, you double it 20 times in a tax-free environment, that will turn into $1 million. You take the same dollar and you tax it at 25%, it turns into $72,000. So the impact on taxes here is dramatic, right? And I want you to think about this not in terms of investment, but in terms of your own income. If you start having big years where you end up paying extra chunks in taxes, it starts to really have just a devastating effect on your wealth. And that's why when I talk about, examples of this, when we look at $250,000 in tax payments equals $1 million in lost wealth, how does it get there? Well, this is the simple question. If you didn't send $250,000 to the IRS, maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's over 5 years, could you double that money 2 times? Could that $250,000 grow to $500,000 over the next 10, 12 years? Could it then grow to $1 million? Could you use it to buy businesses or invest? Right? Could you grow that money a couple of times and double it over your life? The answer is yes, you could. So that's why that extra $250,000 that goes away creates that $1 million in additional lost wealth. And it really starts to add up. And that's where the strategies we're going to get into next is going away from this idea of conventional wisdom, which is just pay max taxes, do standard investments in the market, your wealth's going to grow, and then you're going to decline and spend it down for retirement. What we want to do on the other side of that is work toward this process of creating a modern family dynasty where you have the wealth that can continue to grow, continue to accelerate throughout your life. So when we're getting into that, I know I'm going to cover a lot of information, and this framework that we're going to go through is really what I call the offense-defense framework. This is the framework we work with clients on, and it's separating assets into two different segments. So offense and defense. You have higher risk, higher reward, no downside protection, taxable. That's typically going to be offense, right? That's most people right now are all offense. Then when you go to defense, you're going to go present and future cash flows, a system to lock in profits, tax advantage or tax-free, assets that don't move together. So that's things like businesses, real estate, tax-free matching, there's other assets. So you always have income coming in. So no matter what's happening in the world, you're protected. You have income. That's a different framework. And once you do that, that starts to accelerate wealth in a lot of different ways, which we'll go through. So a lot of these resources that we talk about today, I will be posting these in the Wealth for Life group. This is a private group we've created here on LinkedIn where I share the strategies from high net worth clients and individuals. It's a great safe place to ask questions, get more feedback. There's a lot of information that I can't actually post on LinkedIn in publicly because some of these strategies we use are quite frankly proprietary. And we like to keep, them private. You don't want to blast strategies all over Twitter and the internet, so then they start getting abused. But join that group. There's a lot of the resources that we have. You can go to wealthforlifegroup.com. It'll just redirect you to LinkedIn, or you can just go to LinkedIn and search it, and you'll be able to find it there. And then I also do like to do kind of a networking meeting and meet everyone that joins the group. So that's usually a 15-minute, meet and greet where we talk about what's going on. And I like to get feedback from people about what they think is missing in financial education. So I'm really building this group around what you want to hear. Those calls have been great. We learn a lot. It's very fun to do. So watch out for that as well. And then also I'd suggest subscribing to the Wealth for Life newsletter, Modern Family Dynasty newsletter. I publish that every week on LinkedIn. I'm on 8 editions here on LinkedIn, already up to 729 subscribers as of yesterday. I get a lot of feedback. People really love the newsletter. I have a few thousand subscribers by email too, but there's a lot of value and strategies we share in that. So now let's go back to strategy side. So when we talk about, this first example that I went through where we showed, okay, you had a 401k, you're going to pay 2 million, over 2 million or $1 million in taxes. You're able to cut that in half. That's using a tax bracket strategy. So that's where you're simply creating taxable and tax-free buckets, and you're using the tax brackets to drop into the next lower one, right? So from going from a 37% to a 22% bracket. That simple process, and this is the most underutilized strategy in financial planning, is that allows you to save 6 figures or more in taxes. And I'm not going to go through every element of tax bracket strategy. I went through that on the last part 1, but I do have videos. There's resources in the group. And I'm also going to post this tax-free ebook I have. It's a very simple, short ebook. I'll post that in the group, and you can actually get, it'll show you simple examples of how tax bracket strategy works. Like you'll see here examples like this one where you're trying to build $250,000 retirement income. Your federal taxes would be $40,000. You implement tax bracket strategy, drops your taxes to 12 grand. Again, $28,000 a year in tax savings for the rest of your retirement. 25 years in retirement, you're talking $700,000-$800,000 in tax savings, and that moves the needle. Can you double that money once? Can you double that money twice? So it can really add a lot to the overall package. So that will be posted in the group as well. And also, I'm going to post this Google Sheet because this is just another resource that can help people understand the power of taxes and what it does. So what this does is just allows you to go out there and create different buckets for taxes, and so how you're allocated. And what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to get down to retirement and have all this money be taxable. So this tax bucket worksheet will actually help you allocate the money. I'll post that in the Google Sheet, and you'll be able to see that. You don't want to get down to retirement with 97% of your money in a taxable position. So I'll post a link to that in the group as well. So now, given that we need to create more tax-free income streams, let's kind of talk about one of the best strategies out there to do that. So that is the 3-to-1 tax-free matching program. If you followed me a while, you may have heard me talk about this strategy. But I call this strategy kind of the low-hanging fruit on using financial leverage and the ability to create tax-free income. It accomplishes a lot of goals, and I'm going to kind of show you, some client case studies with this. So this is a 39-year-old business owner. Income's about $500K, no money in a tax-free position. most everything in the market, and kind of thinks the market's a casino. That's a very common, thing I hear from people when they're talking about strategies. So when we look at the tax-free matching program, and I'm going to kind of share a case study on how this works, and I'll walk you through this. Now, this is the first time you've heard it. You're going to be like, wow, this is a lot of information. But again, I'll go through each element so you have a better understanding of it. But in this case, upper left-hand side, he's making contributions into this tax-free bucket. So we're taking taxable money, converting it into tax-free money. So he's got $750,000 going in over 5 years, $150,000 per year for 5 years, done contributing. Then one of our banking partners comes in and matches that to the tune of about 3 to 1. So he has $2.5 million that comes in tax-free. So now we have this $3.2 million tax-free asset. So that's a huge number, right? All this money is now in a tax-free position, but this is a very unique asset structure. So there's no loan docs. You're not taking out a loan. You're not responsible for the bank capital. You're not on the hook for it. You're not making interest payments. This is a very unique collateralized asset, self-collateralized assets, works very simply. Your funds and the bank funds go to an A+ rated insurance company. The insurance company then provides guarantees to you and the bank, uses call options to grow the money, so it's guaranteed against market losses, all in a structure that's less than 1% in cost. So, but now what we have is you have the ability to use $2.5 million tax-free and use that money for 15 years without paying any interest on it, right? Then at year 15, just kind of like a 15-year mortgage, those options pay off the bank. Now you have this free and clear asset, and the distributions you'll see there, you see the ones in the middle, they will project out income and distribution, $15,000 a year in tax-free income, money that's not reported to the IRS. And then I like to highlight the stress test levels because the banks are very rigorous in how they stress test this. Obviously, they're in this position where the bank is saying, hey, we're going to put $2.5 million in an account that you control for the next 15 years, and we don't want any interest on it. So they do massive amounts of stress testing. We look at high interest rate environments in the 1980s. Let's go to the Great Depression one at the bottom. Let's use that one for the planning purposes here. Created $335,000 a year in tax-free income in an environment like the Great Depression, where the stock market went down 12 years in a row and got zero rate of return. So $335,000 in tax-free income. What does that save in taxes? Well, what, about 100 grand a year? So 100 grand a year times 25 years in retirements, $2.5 million in tax savings. Go back to what we started with. Can you double that money and keep it invested? Turns into $5 million, right? So in addition to securing the income on a tax-free basis, we've also created massive tax-free savings on the way out. And that's what starts to have this huge wealth multiplier effect, where you take wealth from 3 million to 5 million, 5 million to 10 million and beyond. Now, of course, you don't have to have huge dollars amount to use this strategy. It's really accessible to anyone that has household incomes over 200,000. And I'll give you this. This is another client of ours, age 47, was in the tourism industry, obviously got hit really hard with COVID and needed to catch up on savings. And so we structured the same plan using only $30,000 a year in contribution. So you have $150,000 going in. The matching is $471,000. So again, you get the advantage of using $471,000 of bank money for 15 years without paying any interest on it, right? $621,000 tax-free asset creates a $46,000 tax-free income stream. Or if we even go down, let's use the Great Depression number again, the worst case scenario, $30,000 in tax-free income, saving probably $8,000 a year in taxes during retirement on that 30K. 25 years in retirement, it's roughly what, $200,000 in tax savings. Can you double that once? 400,000. Can you double it again? 800,000. So it's a simple strategy here that not only uses less of your money to secure the future income, but it creates a massive amount of taxes going forward. And as people are looking about this, as you should be saying right now, okay, well, this is kind of too good to be true, and why haven't I heard about this before? Again, this is a strategy that only worked for those people that are probably in the top 5%. You have to be able to afford this type of strategy. Is that making sense? So let me break down the program a little bit. No upper limit on matching. That means if you put in 250, they'll match it 750,000. If you put in a million, they will match it to 3 million, 5 million, 15 million. So there's no upper limit on the matching. And it's done with those rigorous safety protocols, guarantees from A+ rated insurance companies, over $1 billion funded in the program. And what we typically see when clients using this is they're going to get roughly in the neighborhood, I would say, of 5 times more income, compared to traditional strategies. They have that protection from market losses because the insurance company is using call options to, so they always want downside protection. The banks don't want any of their money at risk, and it's typically going to cost less than 1%. So, and what we'll see, and again, highlighting this is so dramatically different, I know, than other strategies people looked at, but there are no loans or no personal guarantees by you, no interest payments. All of it's going to be tax-free. Real estate's a great investment, but again, this is very different than real estate because we don't have to be on the hook for the loan. And that's why it's a very unique self-contained structure. And it also, what it does for people when they're putting this in place is it frees up that capital. Right now, so much of people's capital is constrained where they can't, like you can't invest the way you want to do because, hey, you have to secure your retirement. You have to make sure you have money, you don't run out of money. When you start taking a smaller amount of your capital into strategies like these, securing your future income, now it frees up other capital for opportunities. It allows you to have this process of scaling wealth and in growing your wealth in a faster way. So another benefit of this one is you only contribute for 5 years and you're done. That allows you to save less and reach your goals. That 5-year piece is important because so many people, like especially a lot of my clients in the tech space, they don't know if they're going to have a job in 5 years from now, or there's a lot of turnover. So being able to do a short period of time, either repositioning other assets, secure that future income, really gives a lot of peace of mind. And that's where I think that when you kind of go out, and it's back to the, what you get from mainstream advice, a lot of times people don't realize that the biggest factor in if you can maintain your lifestyle in retirement is how much you can save, literally how much money you can put away, which again makes sense because how do wealthy people get wealthier? They have assets, businesses, they get exits from companies and all those things that bring in big chunks of money. So it's how much you can actually physically put away is the biggest factor. While most of the industry, 99% of financial advice is focused on rate of return. And this is the only solution that as fiduciaries, I've been able to find that actually brings money to the table, solves this capital risk problem of how much you can save without having to, again, take on more risk. It's actually risk reducing. And it really comes down to a simple, principle. And if you get this one thing from everything we're talking about here, and when it comes to using financial leverage, this is one of the most important things that wealthy people do all the time. Larger amounts of money in safe assets beats less money in risky assets every time. So when you go out on your own, you save $1, you have $1 working, right? When you go out and use leverage, you put $1, you have $4 working. And you can see the chart there. Leverage just makes everything easier. Leverage is what creates fortunes when you're doing it in a safe way. And this is my favorite quote from Ray Dalio. Ray talks about many people still confuse leverage with risk, but the reality is levering up low risk assets so you can diversify away from risky investments is risk reducing. It reduces risk when you use strategies like this. And that's where what happens is the average investor chases risk with their own money and gets upset when they lose, where the wealthy investor uses large amounts of other people's money in safe assets and they win every time. So it's a very simple strategy. If you're a high income earner, household income above 200K, it's one of these strategies that's easy enough to get on the radar. We have all the resources and due diligence you can look through. It's like I said, it's one of the most rigorous assets. I think we have, over 50 video testimonials from clients that are using the program. And it's a very simple strategy to create more income, lower your taxes, and have less risk. And so if you want to kind of get more information on that, you can simply just, it's easy to calculate that tax-free income. So you can just DM me on LinkedIn, or you can email me. There's my email at denver@wealthforlife.net, and we can chat about it. It does require household income of $200,000, which again is why a lot of people aren't going to hear about this, because it's designed for people that are really in the top 5%. So probably like most of you that are on the call. All right. So next, we're going to work into the next section here, and I'm going to queue up my slides. So just give me 1 second. elimination. So as you have questions, there hopefully will be time for a Q&A at the end of the session, and we'll go through that. Let me know if everything is coming through right, and we're going to get into kind of the second half of the program here on advanced tax elimination. So I kind of started out going through, some of the case studies here with, clients 225,000 on 900K income savings, 90,000 in tax savings on income of 450,000, 550,000 in tax savings on business sales, 800,000 in tax savings on $3 million. Those are all huge, numbers of tax savings. And that's, again, stuff that people don't hear about. I was talking with someone the other day. She had 3 advisors, and, she said she was really, they, look at all her stuff, and it's just amazing. And we started having a conversation about taxes, and her income, is, roughly, we started like figuring it out. Well, you could probably save about 100,000 a year in taxes, 100,000 a year over the next 5 years, $500,000 in tax savings. None of her advanced advisory team was even having a conversation about that, because they're all looking at stocks and investments. And that's the idea that has been a problem in this country, is that so much of financial advice is just, gone over, hey, this is how you invest money. It's all stocks. Financial planning is synonymous with stocks. Instead, what's going to move the needle more? Creating $100,000 a year in tax savings. So one of the best ways to do this is a strategy that I call multi-generation endowments. I talked about this a little bit on the last one on part 2, but by far, this is one of the most flexible strategies around. This strategy was brought to me by a high net worth client of mine who'd been using it for a number of years, using it to save $400,000 to $500,000 a year in taxes. He introduced me to the law firm that prepares this strategy. So of course, we went through all the due diligence. I had kind of a mastermind of high net worth clients that are, in that 10 million up in net worth range. We got together, interviewed the law firm, had all these independent counsel and CPA firms meet with that firm. So, at least a dozen or more meetings of different clients with firms and law attorneys and everything else. And everybody went through and go, okay, this is kind of the real deal, and reduces taxes by up to 50%. It's been used since the late 90s, 1998 to be exact, and has an impeccable track record. What I love about it most is that the money never leaves your possession. And when you look at so many other tax reduction strategies out there, captive insurance companies, conservation easement, there's all these, even things like charitable remainder trusts that, will have restrictions on the money. And you sometimes have to send the money away in a lot of these situations. In this one, the money never leaves your possession. So you're able to continue to use your capital for any reason. You can use it back in your business. You can take it out of the structure and go buy more assets. You can continue to grow the money. And it creates this long-term charitable deduction that you're going to pay 40, 60, 80 years down the road. It can even go down to the second generation. So this will work in an incredible way for, incomes. I would say that once you get to the point where incomes are probably 400 to 400,000 and higher, and maybe that's income levels, or you have income spikes, business sales, exits, you can cut those taxes by 50%, like in the previous examples I gave. So it's a hugely flexible strategy. It works great with, again, the tax-free matching program. We talked about 3-to-1 tax-free matching. Ideally, if we can do that by creating that out of tax savings, all the better, right? Very often we can create that whole situation out of tax savings. And I'll give you kind of an example of a case study. So this case study is kind of the one that I started out with, right? Where you have this, large amount of tax savings, 1.4 million in income. This strategy is using that multi-generation endowment to reduce the taxes in a legal and compliant manner, completely safe, not raising audit red flags, none of that stuff. Then we're able to put this money, this $200,000 goes into the tax-free bucket and gets matched to the tune of 3-to-1. So in addition to, of course, the 150,000 that's going to lifestyle to make life a little bit more easier and a little more fun, now we've created this $4 million tax-free asset that then kicks off $280,000 in income. So 7 million in distributions. I actually didn't even calculate the tax savings on the distribution there. It's another big number. And then the charity, at the end of the day, there's a life insurance component. And then the charity gets paid off by the death benefit from the life insurance policy. So all of this is just created through tax savings with no out-of-pocket expenses. And it's really, look at the distribution side of it. That's, again, those charts that I've shown before. Why is it so difficult to go from the top 10%, to the top 1%? And part of that is not having tax protection. This client in particular saves him $350,000 in taxes per year. So over 10 years, that's an extra $3.5 million he would have sent to the IRS that he's not going to send, anymore. So it can really move the needle in a big way. So that's multi-generation endowments. Next, we're going to talk about loan-based split dollar compensation. Very simple. You take compensation as a loan. So this works for C Corps and nonprofits. You take compensation as a loan. It is not taxed as income, and that's also going to create tax-free income streams down the road. So it's another one of those strategies that is very underutilized, but one of the more high-profile cases of that would have been Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh. He became the highest-paid coach in college football a number of years back now, using this particular strategy. And so the University of Michigan put $2 million a year into a tax-free bucket for him, a life insurance strategy. It's like we're talking about with 3-to-1 matching. Then he has this $1.2 million tax-free income that comes out, and as a death benefit, at the end of the day, that goes back and pays back the charity. So you can do this on your own. You don't have to have that realm of $10 million in net worth. You do have to work for a C Corp or be in a nonprofit situation. But it works very well with that tax-free matching because, again, now we're able to use the Holy Grail, which is pre-tax money, to fund a tax-free strategy. That's what everyone's trying to get to. So now maybe if you're a company, obviously this is a great way to attract, recruit, and retain top talent. You can offer a benefit package where 75% of the matching, the funding, is provided by outside sources through the 3-to-1 matching. You have no ERISA requirements, so you can carve it out to certain employees that you want to, and you have no liability for future contributions on it. So it's a very seamless package. Or if you're the top talent and and people are trying to recruit you all over the place, bring this strategy to them and say, hey, let's do this compensation strategy where I get this money. It's not taxed. It's done as a loan. It gets matched 3-to-1. Now you're creating yourself a big tax-free income stream for the future and having somebody pay for it. So that would be a great strategy to do as well. So I see questions coming in on the tax-free matching strategies. I'm going to go through the tax elimination stuff too, and then I will come back and do kind of a Q&A and go through those on the matching side. All right, so that's loan-based split dollar compensation. Now I'm going to give you a flow chart of that, so you can kind of see how that works in practice. Again, this was client groups of ours, attorneys, and had a C Corp, and so the partnership goes out and loans $200,000 to that key individual, to that partner. That money is not taxed as ordinary income. There's actually interest charge on the loan. So the only thing that's taxable there to the person is that interest on the loan. So again, be taxed on if you're using the federal AFR rate. So the taxes are pretty small. You're looking at maybe about $3,000 in taxes that are going to be owed instead of $50,000 or $60,000 or more that would have been owed on that $200,000 in income. Then the same thing happens. So they're loaning the money, not taxable. Then it's matched 3-to-1. So we have this $1 million that goes in, the matching $2.7 million in this case. Now we've created a $3.7 million tax-free asset. Income comes out $364,000 a year, and that creates this yearly tax savings of $127,000, $11 million in tax-free distribution. I know these are crazy numbers when you first time you see them, but a lot of this has to do with simply the advantage of using leverage. You're using larger amounts of money in a safe asset, protecting it from taxes. So that's loan-based split dollar compensation. Let me check my time. We're doing good. All right, so the next one we're going to go to is probably my favorite tax strategy out there. Underutilized as well, private foundations. Private foundations are where you become the charity. You may have heard of private foundations, but they're really underutilized for a lot of different reasons, which I'll go through. But when you become the charity, you can really deduct up to 30% of your adjusted gross income per year. You can put it in your foundation. You can eliminate capital gains taxes on appreciated assets. You can maintain control of those assets and structure those investments any way that you choose. Now, this is not quite as flexible as the multi-generational endowments. With those, you can actually do pretty much anything you want with the money. When you use a private foundation and you're structuring that up, you're deciding what kind of charity you are going to be. And that could be things like, whatever your mission is, we're going to teach entrepreneurships to kids, We're going to, we're going to work with animals. We're going to do a lot of different things. And I'll go through some examples. Then the assets, then as you're using them, have to be spent on the goals and mission of that foundation. So, but you can put money in here, deduct it, have it going in. The money's going to grow tax-free under this umbrella. Then when you want to retire, let's say you're going to go do work for your foundation full time, you can actually take income off of that. And you can pay for all of your expenses for supporting that mission. Now, the keys to those is what do you have to do is you have to make sure that 5% of that is being spent every year in the purpose of that charitable organization that you've set up. Now, a lot of times when we think of foundations, we're thinking of the big names like, the J. Paul Getty, the Lilly Endowment, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, Ford Foundations. But there's actually a lot of ways that you can use a small foundation. And I'm going to give you an example from, this is my neighbor. She has a really cool business, a heavy equipment business. They're actually on the History Channel. You can buy their merch on the History Channel. But her foundation is rescuing animals. That's her passion. So what she does is she takes $50,000 out of her business, puts it into her foundation, gets the tax deduction, and now gets to work in all these different areas of her foundation. She rescues horses and dogs and cats, and she gets to spend her money doing that and gets the tax deduction for it while maintaining control of the assets. This is her Rock Rescue Ranch. And at the same time, she is training her daughter who works in her foundation the value of community service and how to bring value to the world. And that's where I think that is something that we all really need to focus on because, when you look at wealth and generational wealth, 70% of wealth is lost by the first generation, meaning by the time your kids are older. 90% of wealth is lost by the third generation. And you start asking people, why is this wealth gone? Well, you ask people what to say. Well, my kids can't handle it. I don't trust my kids, or they won't work for it. They don't deserve it. So you get all these real answers and so the wealth just gets squandered away. And this to me is really something that dramatically needs to be changed. Because when you look at the concentration of wealth, pardon me, the top 10% own 70% of all wealth. So wealth is concentrated at the top. It's going to stay that way, meaning that it's going to get harder and harder to put resources together. So if you've already done the work to get yourself into this upper echelon level of wealth, you should work to keep it. And you do that by building structures that help your family vision continue. So you take your mission, craft a mission, your vision, your goals, and your values, all these areas about things that you want to do, and you have that continue off into the future. And an example of this is I have a client of mine whose grandma started a camp for kids back in the 1920s. That has become part of the family mission. So every year, the whole family goes down there every summer. They work on the camp. They help with the kids. And it's become just this, this mission of camaraderie. It builds camaraderie among the family and community. And it's just been a source of inspiration and pride for people to do that. And that's so much better than, what I hear. I talk to some people over the summer and guys like, hey, I have, $10 million and my kids have no idea I have any money. He's not even talking to them about it. What's going to happen at the end of that? That money's going to get fought over and blown. And so when is the time to start doing something different and creating different structures? And that's where I talk about when I tie this into what we've been talking about today, which is tax protection. You have this era of, when people get stuck in this high tax environment, it creates animosity, it creates mistrust, creates this us versus them environment because, you have 40% of your money that's always being taken away. When you put structures like this in place and then you implement tax protection, you get generosity, ingenuity, cooperation. Your ability to do good in the world grows in more of an exponential fashion. And that's why I also focus a lot on, creating what I call the modern family dynasty. And creating the modern family dynasty is an absolutely, important goal for everyone, because instead of, again, taking all your money, giving it to your generations, letting it get blown, you take the values and beliefs and successes that you have, you create a framework, put that stuff together that allows people, your generations, your family members to thrive and prosper and grow throughout time. It becomes a source of inspiration. Now, of course, we know that all the kids might not pick it up. Maybe your kids don't pick it up, but your grandkids pick it up. And that's where it comes down to. True legacy is not really about money. It's about taking the values and beliefs and successes that you had, build frameworks, and allow that continue to generations, so that 100 years from now or 150 years from now, your grandkids are sitting there and they're going, hey, do you remember what grandma and grandpa did? And you go, yeah, well, they really did. They did some cool stuff. That's why we're here today doing this. That's why we're here working on this mission. So that's where using a private foundation can be one of the greatest things you do. They're easy to set up. You can structure the mission any way you want. You want to work with animals. You want to work on environmental charities. You want to teach kids. You want to do sports. All of those things can be done. And the time to start doing those things is now, so that you're teaching your kids as you grow the ways to contribute to society, the ways to bring value to the world, is by being an active participant. It's not just, hey, we're going to send our money out to the IRS, hope the government does something good with it. We're going to be active members and actually work hard to make a difference. So that's what building a modern family dynasty can do. So now that we are doing everyone's going to go out and they're going to start their own modern family dynasty. If you liked a lot of these strategies here that we talked about today, it's very simple to get connected. So you just join the Wealth for Life group. It's very easy for me to do Q&As and discussions in the group. The chats get really long, here on LinkedIn. I'm in Restream, and I don't quite see them as well as if I'm on the LinkedIn platform, but we can't answer all those in the group. We'll go through everyone. And if you ask a question here, I'll make sure to respond to it in the group. So go out, join the Wealth for Life group there on LinkedIn. It's wealthforlifegroup.com. I'm going to put all the different resources that we have. And I know there's a lot of people still watching here on the end. So I will encourage you, though, on the tax side of things, take action now. If your income is going to be high and you have a good projection of it, the time to take action is now before year end. So you can DM me on LinkedIn or you can send me an email, Denver@Wealth for Life. Because what happens is, everyone, you're going to call me on December 10th and go, it's the end, it's December. I have a couple weeks left. I need a huge tax liability, I need help. And I'm going to go, you know what? I'm sorry. I spend the next 2.5 weeks with my family over Christmas. And so call me next year. So make sure that you do this stuff and get out in front of it, so you can do that now. You go to the wealthforlifegroup.com. And if you're messaging me, there's some additional resources that I will share with you. And I did create a resource hub, and this is not in the group yet, but if you want to message me, I will share a link to this. I've created this resource hub in a Google Doc, so we can continuously update strategy information as it comes through. So it's about a 34-page document that will go into details with all these case studies and all the different frameworks and how you structure things. A lot of the FAQs and stuff are in there from the strategies we talked about today. So I would suggest, going in there and messaging me. I'll send you out a link to that particular doc. And then I also will post the slide deck to the presentation today in the group. So those resources will be available. And I'm going to take a quick look through the chat here and see if I can go through any of the questions. Let me see if I can scroll through here. So as we're kind of finishing up, if you enjoy the presentation, just give it a like or a thumbs up. And I do appreciate everyone for coming on. But definitely give me some likes and comments there. So let me know what else you'd like to see, and any feedback. I'd like to hear that as well. So let me take a look through the chat. So it's a couple questions. So what's in it for the bank on the 3-to-1 matching program? Bank gets LIBOR plus 1.75%. So of course, the principles of banking that everyone knows is bank makes their fortune on small spreads. So that is probably the lowest margin you're ever going to see on lending. 1.75% is their profit. It's basically a no-risk loan for them, because the insurance company is going to guarantee the capital. So they're happy to let that money sit there and grow on your behalf for the 15 years, take their 1.75% profit and call it a day. So it's a very, very unique system. It's very simple. And I think to that, and this is the kind of pros and cons of that strategy. I think the number one con is that you're waiting 15 years to take income. So being able to wait that long to take income, create the tax-free income, it does take a little more time, and that's because of how they do the funding schedule. The bank is going to fund it. They're going to match you 100% the first 5 years, and the bank is going to fund it all on their own. You're done. They're going to fund it year 6 through 10. Capital, so it takes all the capital is going in over a 10-year period. Then after year 15, bank is paid off, and then you take the tax-free income stream. So it's a longer-term strategy. So I see Craig, the PowerPoint and the docs, those will make sure you join the group. The PowerPoint slides will be posted in the group. And most of the resources should be in there as well. And eventually I will post, so I've got the ebook, there'll be the Google Sheet that we talked about, and a link to the resource hub as well. And if you want to get more information on kind of how these strategies can work for you, just message me out here on LinkedIn. Got it. No, I appreciate the comments. There are other strategies that you can use that are shorter term than 15 years, but so if you have questions on those, this just happens to be one of the best, but there's certainly other strategies you can do in a shorter term that will kind of help to achieve some similar goals. All right, just a few minutes left, you guys. I appreciate all the feedback and questions. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining. We're just over a little over an hour. Make sure you message me if you have questions. And I appreciate everyone signing on. My name is Den Vernoes. Thanks again for attending, and I will hope to talk to you soon.